Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the living dead. The dead who live on living flesh. The dead whose haunted souls hunt the living. The living whose bodies are the only food for these ungodly creatures. Night of the living dead. A bizarre adventure in fear. An experience in shock, more shattering than your strangest nightmare. Night of the living dead. A night with the dead who cannot die. A night of total terror. Night of the living dead.
Happy Sunday night. Welcome to Sunday night of the living dead. Hope everybody has had a good weekend, a good week. It's pretty well. It's been storming like a son of a bitch here all day long. So if my internet is a little wonky, I've noticed it's been a little slow today. Let me know in the comments. I'll see if I can get that figured out. I've got a couple people in the house tonight. Zombie Grease, what's up, my man? How you doing tonight? Good to see you. Straight Edge Zombie, looking forward to it. Got a couple questions. So yeah, it's been a busy week. Put up on Thursday. I'm sure a lot of you saw. Actually, we got a comment here. Last Thursday, I put up the Vampire, or how was it? Vampire, I think is how it's pronounced. The Italian cut of Martin. That was actually the second time that I've actually seen that ever. So I watched it again for the first time, or for the second time when that actually premiered on the channel, believe it or not. But it's available if anybody wants to own it. On this Martin, the Arrow Martin DVD release from Arrow. It's from the UK. Go check us out, pick it up. And really, this is probably the best version, best release of Martin that you could have gotten up until the second sight release that just came out. But yeah, it does include Vampire on there as well. So if anybody's, I had a few people asking about that on my Facebook page. But yeah, other than that, yeah, put that up on Thursday. I haven't done too much. I got another commentary ready to drop next week. It's commentary that Bill Lustig did with George Romero for The Crazies that came out on that Blue Underground DVD release back in like 2003. So I think that's the only time that commentary's been released in the US. I don't think it's on any of the Blu-rays that I know of. So yeah, that's going to go up next week. Probably this Thursday, I think, is when I got it set. So I got a bunch of stuff in the pipeline. Should be pumping out some more Romero-related content. Going to try to do these every Sunday night. Just a live stream, get out there, catch up, see what's on the horizon, what's in the distance. And hey, answer questions. Let's see, Zombie Grease is in here. I got a couple people in here tonight with a couple of questions. So I'll get to those. but yeah, that the vampire cut is a little weird. The guy that it's curated by Dario Argento, and the guy that worked with Argento on the edit of that is the same guy that worked with Argento for the Dawn Argento cut. So it's kind of like that. I mean, it's just wall to wall. I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, I mean, it's on my channel. It's I think the last video I posted. Give it a watch. It's different. It's a completely different vibe than what Romero did with his cut of Martin. Um, it's wall to wall Goblin soundtrack, and I gotta say, I love the soundtrack for it. Say what you want about the editing and the pacing of it, and it's a little strange, but the soundtrack, the Goblin soundtrack itself, is amazing. I'm kind of on the edge of picking that up actually on vinyl. I've seen it for about 35-40 bucks on eBay, so that may be my next purchase. I haven't been buying a whole lot of stuff lately. I know the Living Dead weekend's coming up here in less than a month now, or right around a month, a little bit more than a month. Trying to remember what day it is, so it's still at the 7th. Feels like it's been May forever for whatever reason, but yeah, looking forward to that. So yeah, trying to curb my spending on things a little bit, just to save a little money for the trip to Pittsburgh. Which, like I said, I'm going to be doing some streams um, from the convention. Probably doing some location scouting. I'm trying to find some new locations I haven't been to yet, but planning on seeing, which I think this is 100% going to be the last time anybody's going to be able to see, even if it's still there by the time we get there. It's going to be the last time that anybody can see the airport from Dawn of the Dead. I mean, I think they're pretty much, they got it on lockdown now. I don't think we'll be able to even get close to it, because I think they're getting ready to tear that down, in a matter of months, if not weeks. I don't know. We're going to find out when we get there. But of course, the mall, and probably drive through Braddock. You don't really want to get out and walk around Braddock. Um, it's a rough area, but Braddock from Martin. A lot of that's still. I mean, it looks worse than it did in Martin, sadly. But there's still a charm to it. I love driving through the little strip on Braddock there. But yeah, I'm gonna do some of that. Do some live streams. Let those the nights that I'm there. Just kind of answer some questions. Anybody has any questions about what's going on at the convention, any behind the scenes stories, yada, yada, yada. Let me grease. The original score is haunting, especially the track Halloween. Yeah, I mean, it's really got the music, the cue that has gotten stuck in my head since I watched it the other night. It's what I call the rapey scenes. The music for the rapey scenes when Martin's doing his thing, which is funny in the actual cut at one point when he when he kills the Al Levitsky, the guy that plays the woman's lover or whatever, when he kills him with the stick in the throat. In the actual cut of Martin, everybody knows he goes back and the woman lives. She'll wake up because Martin doesn't need to kill her because he got his blood from yada yada yada. But in this, they just cut the part from the train where he's killing the woman on the train. They just took that and just threw that on that as well to make it look like Martin is killing this woman. It's really a fucking weird cut. It's interesting though. It's very interesting. But yeah, that little cue of music, that boom, 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 boom. I don't know. It's a really good score. That's the best thing I think it's got going for, and I think some of that music's been used in other films as well, from Goblin. So yeah, but yeah, I may pick that up. Here soon. But yeah, the cut in general, it's a completely different story. They kind of played it. They kind of play it more, whereas in Martin, the Romero cut of Martin, we kind of know what he is in the first 15 minutes. It kind of establishes that. They kind of make you guess until he does it, which they take the whole opening train sequence and put it like 15 or 20 minutes into the film, and we don't really know the story we don't really know what's going on. It's just kind of Martin, walking through Braddock and all that with Cuda before he actually strikes first. But yeah, it's a weird cut. But it's entertaining. It's just I enjoy it in a completely different way than I enjoy the original, just for the simple fact that it's something different. The same way I enjoy the Argento cut of Dawn of the Dead. It's just a completely different way to experience a movie that you love, which I'm always a big proponent of. Yeah, I 100% agree. And that was actually a list that I was kind of putting together in my head of what are my top favorite vampire films. I mean, Martin's definitely at the top because it is Romero, but it's such a good film, way ahead of its time. I've heard people refer to it as the first A24 type of horror film, which I can see and completely agree with. So yeah, Martin. I can go on and on about how much I love Martin, but yeah, the Vampire cut. It's interesting. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's definitely unlike anything that yeah, unlike any Martin that you've seen before. So now the next cut, where I think we're all waiting for, is the black and white hour, 2.5 hour cut of Martin. That's out there. It exists. I don't know what the plan is for that, when it's coming out, what they're going to do with it. But I'm it's like I told the Creepy Kentuckian the other day. I was actually on. That was another thing I did earlier this week. I completely blanked out on. I was on the MWO podcast on the Dead Pit Radio. I was with the Creepy Kentuckian, and that's one thing we discussed. Was my two holy grail must see Romero projects before I die, and that's one of them. The other one is of course, Michael Felcher. If you don't know, he does Red Shirt Pictures. He does a lot of the behind the scenes documentaries and stuff like that. For pretty much any Blu-ray DVD, cult horror DVDs, probably since the early to mid 2000s. And he was a good friend of Romero's. And before Romero before Romero passed away, I'm not exactly sure the timeline on this. It was less than a year before he passed. He actually had Felcher come to his house or apartment or whatever in Toronto, sit down and record his thoughts on all of his films chronologically. Like, they would sit down, watch the movie, and then they would have like a little hour and a half conversation about it after the fact. And this is all recorded. It's out there. If Felcher's got it, I don't know what he's planning on doing with it. He was talking about it the other night, and it's something that he hasn't even been able to go back to and listen to yet, just for sentimental reasons. So yeah, I can't wait to hear it. I don't know what he plans on doing with it. There's talk of maybe it'd be a Patreon thing for the Garf, which George A. Romero Foundation has their own Patreon. That would be something that, I mean, hell, there's very there's very few prices that they could ask for that I would not be able or willing to spend to listen to those, just to get Romero's thoughts and memories and just how he felt, because a lot of that stuff, he hadn't seen in years and years and years. So I'd love to just get his opinions, how they've, maybe they've changed over the years. But I think, one in particular, There's Always Vanilla. Felcher said that, and that was a movie that Romero wanted nothing to do with for years and years and years. Didn't care about, didn't like. But then they sat down and watched it, and then apparently Romero kind of came around and was like, this is actually pretty good. I kind of like that. There was something there, So that would be just interesting to listen to. So yeah, those are my two holy grails: the Martin 2.5 hour black and white cut, and those podcasts or audio recordings that Felcher has. Spanish version of Dracula, Salem's Lot, Let the Right One In. Yeah. I mean, Let the Right One In, I think is amazing. I just bought that on Blu-ray not too long ago. I've been meaning to revisit it. It's been a few years, but I remember I've seen it a couple of times, and it's really, really good. Salem's Lot's one that I haven't watched since I was a kid. That's another one I probably need to revisit. And the Spanish version of Dracula, I don't think I've seen that. Mine would probably, I mean, I'd have to I would throw Let the Right One in there. I would definitely, I love Werner Herzog's version of Nosferatu. I love the original too. Both of those would have to be on my list. And the movie that I watched the other night, Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, that may make the list too because it was a completely different take on the But there's so many vampire movies, good ones. I mean, From Dusk Till Dawn. I fucking love that movie. Twilight, that's a good one. What else we got going on here? Zombie Grease. Kentucky did an awesome interview with John Carpenter. Highly recommend listening. Yeah, I've listened to it. Yeah, it's funny they've talked about that interview and how nervous they were going into that because Carpenter's kind of had a bit of a reputation of being kind of a grouch, a bit of a curmudgeon sometimes in his older age. So they were kind of nervous going into that, but they just said he couldn't have been more cool about doing that interview. Talks about everything from earthquake faults near Kentucky to smoking weed before you hit something. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely practiced in that as well. If it's amazing, what you can do in that Carpenter-esque state of mind. We'll just call it. The edited for TV Dawn of the Dead cut that I did that's on my channel. Yeah, a lot. But yeah, Carpenter. I mean, I've never met John Carpenter. I'd love to at some point. We're from the same neck of the woods. He's a Western Kentucky boy. I'm a Western Kentucky boy. I grew up literally right down the road from where he was born, where he went to college. So, and a lot of the references in Halloween and in a lot of his movies, I know, like, they mention Smith's Grove Sanitarium. Smith's Grove is just a little town outside of Bowling Green, right up the road from where I grew up. Russellville, that's right in between where I grew up in Hopkinsville and Bowling Green. I mean, he uses a lot of references from that area. I had a question up here somewhere, and a couple here. This is kind of on the same topic from Dennis Radman. Rad name. What are other kind of horror movies do you like? That is a good question. I first and foremost, I love the horror genre. I mean, Romero is my love, my favorite. But I grew up on horror. I mean, I remember being 3-4 years old, maybe 5 years old, and I remember my dad used to work the second shift, and I'd be in bed, but I'd always hear him get home. And I remember this one period, I guess he had rented or borrowed the original, the first two Hellraiser movies. And I remember being like 4 or 5 years old and getting up when he would get home from work, like 12 a.m., 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting up, covering his jacket over me, over the little heater on the floor. We had those little vents on the floor that would blow heat. And I'd just sit there with him in the middle of the night. We were just watching Hellraiser. Just watching fucking as a 4 or 5 year old watching Hellraiser. And it always just fascinated my dad because he was like, you didn't act scared or anything. You were just like, oh, this is cool. So I was one of those kids that, didn't get scared, just thought crazy shit was cool. So, but yeah, favorite horror movies, outside of Romero, I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to me, is the best horror movie ever made. There's something about it that has never been duplicated. It has been tried thousands and thousands of times since, but that is a film that has yet to be duplicated. I think the closest thing, and this is another one of my favorites, the closest thing that is probably my generation's version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the Blair Witch Project. That's something that nobody had seen since, had seen before, and nobody's really been able to duplicate since. Just the way that the marketing aspect of it. Nobody knew if it was real or fake or what it was, but that's another one that had a big effect on me. And I think that's the closest that we've come to another Texas Chainsaw moment. I mean, Last House on the Left. I love a lot of Craven stuff. Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes. Um, I do love the original Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, of course. I mean, Craven had a lot of good ones. Um, uh, Toby Hooper, like I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The sequel's good. I don't like it as much as the original. And I find myself over time um, liking the sequel less and less, and liking the original more and more. I don't know why. There was a period there where I was like, I was like, oh man, part two, Chop Top. I mean, Bill Moseley's awesome in that. I love the characters. I mean, there's something so Texas still about that, which Zombie Grease would, you know what I'm talking about. But there's a genuine Texas feel to those first two Chainsaw movies that I don't think they were able to really ever replicate again. Probably because they shot them all in California or fucking New Zealand or whatever. And the actual first two were shot in Texas. Well, yeah, what other? I'm just kind of rambling. I'm trying to go through directors. Outside of Romero, probably my second favorite director is Dario Argento. I love Italian horror. I love the Italian zombie stuff from like Fulci. We were talking about this the other day on the MWO podcast with Creepy Kentuckian. We were talking about Fulci and Zombie, City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery. I mean, there's something about those, and I told him this, and I think is the best way that I can describe a Fulci film to somebody who's never seen a Fulci film, is that you can actually smell the gore. You can smell it. It's one second. But yeah, you can. That's the best way I can describe it. But Argento, back to Argento, probably my second favorite horror director. Maybe second favorite director. Period. I love Suspiria. I just picked up the that box set of Tenebrae that Synapse released. And I watched it again, and Tenebrae was always one of my favorites, and I think it's his best giallo, which I know some people, it's an arguable point. I mean, Deep Red is a fucking classic. I mean, those first three, I love Four Flies on Grey Velvet. I still need to get that. I know Severin released a version of that here recently. But there's something about Tenebrae, man. It's perfect. There's something so perfect about it. Just from beginning to end, the story, the way it unfolds, the red herrings, and it's hard to figure out. A lot of the times in Argento's movies, you kind of figure out who the killer is about halfway through if you're really paying attention. But the first time I saw Tenebrae, I mean, I was just like, "What the fuck? I got to go back and rewatch that. Does this even make sense?" And it does. I think it's Argento's most well crafted giallo, and maybe his most, I mean, just most coherently crafted, because it makes the most sense out of any. So that's the thing about Argento too, is that his films are nightmares, basically, that he's bringing to life. So sometimes they don't make sense, and Suspiria at times is like that. But man, something about Suspiria, man, it's the lighting, it's the sound. The best, I think it's a tagline or something on one of the posters. It's the best horror film you've ever heard. I love that. That makes so much sense to me. Love Suspiria. Even his later work, which I know a lot of people shit on, but I'm going back and rewatching them now, and I'm liking them more and more. I think the Masters of Horror episode that he did, Jennifer, I thought that was probably the best one of those that I saw. I think that was fantastic. I just watched Sleepless for the first time in forever today. Actually, I finished it today, and that's a good show. I mean, it was made in 2000, and it feels like it just feels like an old school Argento film. But yeah, to me, it's Tenebrae and Suspiria on the Argento. I go back and forth on those. I love both of those. Cronenberg, of course, you got to love Cronenberg. And a lot of those movies, it took more than one watch to really get. Dead Ringers was one of those. Scanners, it took more than one time to watch it to really kind of get it. Love Videodrome. God, I could go on forever about this. So, but yeah, there's there's a lot that I really really love. Um, let's see, I got some other stuff here. Zombie Grease, your Herzog impression. I'd love to hear that. Come on, the floor is yours. Uh, top 11 for Zombie Grease. Hereditary. I mean, we talked about Ari Aster last week. Love that one. Just talked about Suspiria. Evil Dead's one that I appreciate and enjoy, but I don't. There's something about it I just don't love. My favorite of those films is Army of Darkness. For whatever reason, I just think it's the most entertaining. It's the most coherent, cohesive, and I just love Bruce Campbell. I think that's Bruce Campbell's best performance. But I mean, I do appreciate, and I do own like 20 different copies of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. So, um, let the right one in. American Werewolf in London. That's one that that I've watched a couple of times, and I feel like there's something there that I'm just not getting. Uh, a good friend of mine just watched it for the first time, and he's a big film guy and horror guy. He watched it for the first time here recently and just loved it. I mean, he said it's one of his favorite movies ever at this point, I think. And I appreciate it. I enjoy it. The effects are amazing. I love the opening 20 minutes or so. But that's one I feel like I just got to go back and really rewatch it a few times before and just see. Maybe it's just something I'm not getting. But uh, love Phantasm. That's one to me like Suspiria. Um, that that I think is just a nightmare come to life. A lot of it doesn't make any fucking sense, um, but it's a phenomenal movie. I've seen that dozens of times. Yes, that this is another big one. I mean, speaking of Carpenter, I didn't even mention on favorite Carpenter films, but Halloween's definitely up there. The Thing, of course. Um, there's very little of Carpenter that I don't like, but I love Halloween. I think that's a nearly perfect horror film. Texas Chainsaw, of course. The Exorcist. I mean, yeah, that's got to go on there. I mean, that's just an iconic thing that I think just at the time nobody had seen shit like that. A little girl possessed by the devil doing this. No wonder that fucked up that whole generation, man. I can definitely understand. Let's see, another question pop up here just a second ago. Let's see if I can hunt that down. But yeah, got a video we're gonna watch, and I'm in the mood for a parody. It's one of my favorite Romero parodies. We're gonna watch that a little later on, but yeah, be sure to like, subscribe. I'm guessing if you're watching this, you probably are already, but if not, like and subscribe. I'm just bullshitting here. Here we go. Straight Edge Zombie. Have you ever met Savini? I've heard mixed things. Well, yes, I have. I've met Savini quite a few times, in a convention setting and outside a convention setting. In a convention setting, and I know Savini has kind of a bad rap, but in a convention setting, I've met him 3 or 4 times now. It's been quite a few times. And I'll admit, first time I met him, I was a little disappointed, a little taken back. I was just like, man, this guy kind of seems like a bit of an asshole. But I've heard the secret to meeting him at a convention is to walk up to his table with an attractive woman, and he'll spring to life, which is understandable, I guess. But yeah, I don't think I've ever done that I can remember. But yeah, but outside of a convention setting, I've actually bumped into him in a hotel lobby, stuff like that, and he's the most polite, nice guy. I think I think it was Zombie Grease actually, and we were emailing talking about Savini, and he said he thinks it has something to do with PTSD or something from his time in Vietnam, and that's absolutely possible. I mean, he tells a story about when he came home from Vietnam. He emotionally he was shot. I think he said his marriage, just went to hell, and he had no emotion, couldn't cry. It was just He had turned it off because, you know, in his words, you have to do that. You know, that's something you had to do in Vietnam. It's kind of just turn your emotions off and, you know, do your thing. But yeah, he said that he was just for, I guess, a couple of years there until he saw what the fuck was the movie? Midnight Cowboy. And when he saw that by the end of that movie, he just broke down into tears, and that's when he felt his emotions come back the first time. So yeah, there's definitely probably some emotional scarring there from Savini, just from Vietnam. And you know, I think we all have relatives or have, you know, been in Vietnam. We've heard stories. We know what the history is, and it's pretty fucked up. Um, but but yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed things about Savini. The actual first interaction I ever had with Savini was at the Texas Frightmare Weekend in 2008, and it was at a panel discussion. It was him and Greg Nicotero, and of course they come on stage and they do their, you know, introductions or whatnot, and they ask for questions. And this is my first convention. I don't know the protocols, or, you know, I'm 19 years old. I'm just like, holy shit, I'm looking at Tom Savini in person. It's actually him. And so I'm just like, I just have fucking just a billion questions to ask. I'm just dying to ask questions. He's like, all right, well, let's open it up for questions. And there's silence. So I'm gonna wait and let somebody else ask a question first because I'm nervous as shit. I'm gonna wait and let somebody else ask a question first. And it's silence. Nobody wants to ask the first question. So just fucking fart out of my mouth. How was it working with Joe Spinell? And he immediately looks at me, points his finger, and says, raise your hand. And I was just heartbroken. I was like, did I just get dressed down by Tom Savini? Just slapped down by Tom Savini? Like, yeah, I should have probably raised my hand. But I was just at a point where nobody was asking questions, and I just had a billion, and it was just like, but it was just like, raise your hand. And yeah, after that, I mean, I met him at his table, and again, he just seemed kind of like, you know, whatever, kid, I'll sign it. But the thing about him at conventions, though, I mean, God, he'll sign $20. You buy something from him, he'll sign anything you got. That doesn't happen anymore at conventions. It's literally now $30 to $40, low end. Or I guess that's probably the median there. 30, $40 for an autograph, and sometimes extra for a picture. Savini, $20. You buy a picture off his table, he'll sign it. And anything else you got that you want him to sign, he'll sign it. $20. Take a picture, whatever. So yeah, he is cool in that regard. There is just something a little off about Tom. But, you know, to me, Tom Savini is one of the special people of the world. And I don't mean mentally, you know, deficient or something. But I mean, like, just one of those people that if aliens landed on Earth and said, bring me your most unique and special people, Savini would be one. I mean, stuntman, actor, just his creativity, his vision. Just, I mean, listening to him in interviews still to this day. I mean, the dude's he's God, how old is Tom now? Is he in his 70s already? I think. But it's hard to tell because he's so youthful. He's so vibrant. I mean, he's in still an amazing shape. He literally got hit by a fucking car. Literally, this is about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I guess. Dude was riding his bike, got hit by a fucking car. And like a couple of days later, it was just like, he's fine. A 70-something-year-old guy got hit by a fucking car and just shrugged it off and was like, yeah, I'm good, man. It's all good. Tom's a special guy. Very, very cool. But I think he's just a little uncomfortable in convention settings for what it doesn't make any sense because he's done a million of them. So I don't know. Another question here. Old Dennis Radman, what's your least favorite Romero flick? I would probably have to go with Two Evil Eyes, if that counts. And I know that I literally just said, oh, Argento is probably my second favorite filmmaker, and it's a movie made by Romero and Argento. But I just never got that movie. And I think it's, to a lot of people, probably a lot of people's least favorite, honestly. But there's just something about it. I think it's just the Edgar Allan. I don't even think it's the Edgar Allan Poe thing. The Poe influence. I'm not a big Edgar Allan Poe fan, but I liked Argento's half of the movie better. Actually, Harvey Keitel was in his. I think Romero's had Adrian Barbeau, and what's it? Rami Zada or something like that. I don't know. I've just never that one's never grown on me. Dark Half is another one that I'm not the biggest fan of. To me, Romero's best work, and the thing that I love about Romero and when the films that he made with a family atmosphere. You know, I mean, from Night of the Living Dead, pretty much all the way up to by Day of the Dead. It was just small, independent. That was the inspiring thing to me about Romero that made me want to make movies. When I was making student films and stuff back in my younger years, that was the big inspiration to me. It was like Romero, and really, if you look at it, Romero was kind of the first filmmaker to show the world that, hey, you could make a movie anywhere you're at. You know, you don't have to be in Hollywood. And I know there's been independent filmmakers out there for years and years before Romero, but I think the idea of, hey, get your friends together and go make a movie, that idea, which is anybody could do. That's what I did in high school. He kind of was the first that I could think of to kind of do that. Like, oh, we're in Pittsburgh, let's all throw in some money and make a movie. Let's all get together and make a movie on the weekends, type of deal. And that's how Night of the Living Dead was made. It was made on the weekends, and during the week they'd go shoot commercials and industrial films and shit. But I think that's the thing that resonates with Romero's fans, not just me, but I think his fans in general, is just the family atmosphere. Everybody loved. I mean, if you go to Living Dead Weekend every year, you still see that. Everybody's still happy to see each other. Everybody still loves each other. There's no, nobody's talking shit about each other. Like, you never hear anybody talking, other than maybe Richard Rubenstein, but you never hear anybody that worked on those films talk shit about anybody else that worked on those films, especially George. I've never heard anybody say a negative thing about George Romero. It's an amazing community of filmmakers, and I mean the Tony Bubas and the Mike Gornicks and those the people that worked with George. I mean, a lot of them that went on to do bigger and better things, like Pat Boob. I think he was an editor on Heat or something. He went on to Hollywood to be a pretty big, pretty big guy, I guess, in the editing department. Nick Mestandria started with George, went on. I think he was like Wes Craven's, right hand man for years and years and years. Of course, Tom Savini went on to do bigger and better things. I mean, God, look at Greg Nicotero. Nicotero is like the king of horror right now. I mean, the dude's just making money hand over fist. The Walking Dead and everything that he's involved in, the Creepshow series now. I mean, K&B itself, I mean, God, they pretty much do the effects for every film you see now that has any kind of practical effect. It's K&B. But yeah, I mean, there's that family atmosphere, the hey, let's get together with our buds and make a film. I think that started with Romero. I mean, you saw that with Kevin Smith and Clerks. I mean, that's how that was made. It was like, hey, I'm going to get my friends together. We're going to make a movie. Yeah, I just think that's the aspect of Romero that's really resonated for all these years. What was the fucking question? What's your least favorite? Yeah. So I'd probably say Two Evil Eyes. In terms of least favorite Romero flick. Questions? Yeah, I guess for Tom Savini stunt work. Yeah, Tom. I mean, Tom's a crazy person. Literally was just like, yeah, hit me with a car. It's cool. Literally, down to do anything. Didn't care for Monkey Shines. No, that wasn't Stephen King. It was based on a novel previous to that. I can't remember who that's another one that I appreciate more than Two Evil Eyes and Dark Half and just that little period there. But yeah, that's definitely another one that I'm not the biggest fan of. I think it's good. I think it's a really well made film. I just think, in the same way that I was just talking a minute ago, I think it was kind of missing that family atmosphere a little bit. I mean, I think still it had a lot of the same people working on it, like Barbara Anderson and Pat Boob. I think was working on that. Of course, Christine Romero's in that film. Um, but there was just there was something about it that just didn't have the same charm as like Day of the Dead or Creep Show or any of the ones that even came before that. And the thing about Creep Show too is it still had that vibe, even though they were working with big time actors at the time. I mean, Hal Holbrook, Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson, um, but it still had that vibe to it. I don't know. As a documentarian, you work sometimes completely alone, no crew. No shit. I had no crew, 2 documentary subjects and a camera. Yeah, I mean that's true guerrilla filmmaking. That's the independent spirit. I mean that's what I used to do, man. I used to make my idea of little mini feature films in high school. I had one play here at the Kentucky Theater, a couple of film festivals and different stuff like that. But that's the thing. Sometimes it literally is. I remember nights where you would just me and the camera, and I would just be getting little shots to throw in here and there. But yeah, that's independent filmmaking. I'm sure. I think Mike Gornick's talked about going out, for like Martin, for the shots of just him and John Amplas, where it's just literally him and John Amplas just doing, no permits, no nothing like that. It's like that scene in Ed Wood, Tim Burton's Ed Wood, where Johnny Depp's the cops are coming. He's like, oh, we don't have a permit, so what do we do? Run. That hit home when I first saw that. So I'd love to discuss documentary films. I'm a huge fan of documentaries. Um, I love the older ones, though, the more like Salesman from '66, I think, which I guess those are more maybe cinema verite than documentaries, but it's to me, it's kind of the in the same vein. American Movie. I love the Paradise Lost films from Joe Berlinger. I'm a huge fan of those. I became obsessed with that case here recently after rewatching those again and just kind of falling down that rabbit hole of trying to figure out, trying to figure out who did it. Problem now is distribution. Too many films, not enough venue outlets. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing now. I mean, it's hard. It's easier than ever, in my opinion, to actually make a film, but I think it may be harder than ever now to get it seen. I think that's the biggest issue with independent film now. Is back in the day, I mean, you actually had to have a film camera and all this, editing equipment and blah blah blah. Now you can just you take a DSLR. Fuck. I mean, I know a lot of movies are made with fucking DSLRs. Final Cut, get that for your free computer, and you can. I mean, of course, the hardest part, which to me is still the reason why that it's that I'm not making any films or anything anymore, is just getting people to help, getting people to do things. The older you get, the harder it is to find people that are willing to help, because I mean, everybody's got their own fucking lives now. Back when I was, my early 20s, teen years, it was, hey man, what are you doing tonight? Oh, nothing, man, just hanging out. Oh, cool, you want to shoot? Yeah, I'm down. I'll meet you there. Yeah, it's, it's a lot easier now. It's like, no, I got work in the morning and fucking kids, and yeah, just not. But yeah, it's yeah, definitely harder to get your shit seen. I mean, there are a ton of outlets where you can you can get your shit seen. You're just probably not going to make any money off of it. You're not going to gain any money. But I mean, YouTube and there's all kinds of different streaming platforms. But actually getting it seen. I mean, for getting a theater, I mean that's nearly impossible anymore unless you actually have major studio backing. Because I mean, fuck, the major studios own pretty much all the movie theaters, so the theaters that are playing films are only playing the films that the studios are producing. I mean, it's and that's kind of how the system works now. Whereas back in the day, you can have those little mom and pop, grindhouse theaters that they, used to call them back in the day, where you could just play anything. You just fucking say, hey, you got a film when you play it. I mean, I don't. But yeah, it's a lot harder now unless you have like a little local mom and pop theater in your town that'll actually work with you and play it. Like I said, I got mine played at the Kentucky Theater in Louisville, which is an awesome theater. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, that's the theater. One of my favorite albums of all time is by a band called Slint that that played. And they're from Louisville, but their album was called Spiderland, and they actually did their album release or played that album all the way through for the first time at the Louisville Theater back in the day. So that was a um, fun little bit of trivia there. I've got a question here. Aaron Jordan, did you see Dawn of the Dead 3D? I did. I saw it twice. I would have much preferred to have seen it just just a regular 35 millimeter print. I would have been fucking fine. But the fact that a theater near me, which I never dreamed would ever happen, because I don't live, if I don't live in a New York or anything like that. I live kind of in a smaller area. Closest cities to me are probably like, where I actually had to go to actually see Dawn of the Dead there's Clarksville, Tennessee, which is where I saw it the first time, then Louisville. We don't ever get movies like that. So just the fact that Dawn of the Dead was playing at a theater near me was enough for me to go see it. I'm not a huge fan. Actually, I'm not even gonna just put it lightly. I hate 3D. As a guy who wears glasses, trying to wear those fucking glasses over my actual glasses so I can see what's going on, it doesn't work out. It's uncomfortable. It's a little discombobulating at times. Not a fan of 3D at all. But the fact that Dawn of the Dead's playing in 3D, 2D, 4D, fucking if you want to project it on the side of a barn in goddamn Berea, Kentucky, I'll be there. Um, so yeah, I did see it. They actually did a pretty good job for I was actually kind of skeptical just because of how old that Dawn was, and it wasn't actually shot to be in 3D. But some of the 3D was actually pretty fun, pretty well done. A lot of the blood spurts and stuff like that. I So yeah, I thought a lot of the 3D was done actually pretty well, and it was actually the best part, the most fun that I had seeing Dawn in a theater, is seeing it with a group of people, um, some of which a lot of them actually had never seen Dawn of the Dead before. Because I mean, Dawn is not the most readily available film. It's not on. You're not going to watch it on Netflix. The Blu-ray came out here in the States back in like 2007, 2008. And that's the last one that's been released here. So it's not, I mean, it's out of print. I mean, it's not readily available um, for people to just go pick up and watch. I mean, it's kind of a hard film to watch. So I was watching it with a lot of people who had never seen Dawn of the Dead before. And that was a fun, interesting experience to see what worked still, what didn't quite work with new audiences. Probably my two favorite reactions from watching. I saw it twice, two different theaters. My two favorite reactions: the first night we were there was a guy sitting next to me, a little bit down the row, and he was kind of a little bit older guy. You can tell he's probably like a rough kind of old school punk rocker type guy. Guess had never seen Dawn of the Dead before, so it's him and a couple of his buddies sitting there watching it. And every time that the gun zombie, the zombie that takes the rifle from Roger and is pointing it to his head throughout the whole movie, and he's just like in the background throughout the whole movie and shit. Anytime, the first time he took that gun and walked away with it, the dude fucking next to me busted out laughing. Every time that zombie showed back up in the background, any scene, anytime he saw that zombie, dude be like, "There he is. He still got that damn gun." He was like fucking all about he thought that was the most hilarious fucking thing that he had ever seen. The helicopter blade zombie Jim Crud who gets his that still gets a big reaction. That still gets a big woo reaction. Um, and the other second favorite reaction that I got was on the way out of the second screening. There was a father and his son. I guess his son was probably 10, 11, 12, middle school aged. Obviously, had never seen Dawn of the Dead before. And of course, that young. I mean, shit. When you look at what you're watching now, I mean, you're desensitized to most anything as old as Dawn of the Dead, you would think. But this, 11, 12-year-old kid, as we're walking out of the theater, is just looking at his dad like, that was the coolest mall I've ever seen. He was like, why isn't our mall like that? So that was cool. Even the mall holds up. The mall to the children, to the young folks. It's still a pretty damn cool mall. But yeah, it was definitely fun. Something I dreamed of for years and years and years. That was the first time just seeing it on big screen, period. Yeah, I 100% agree, Aaron. Amazing to see Dawn at a theater for the first time. And yeah, like I said, I did it twice. 3D, 2D, whatever. Loved it. And I'm wondering, because last year at the Living Dead weekend, I'm in Rogo Mall, the place where J.C. Penney's used to be, actually in the film, is now a movie theater. So they'll do screenings every now and then, I guess every year or so, when the convention comes around. And last year they showed Night of the Living Dead 90, and it was awesome. Bill Moseley was there, Tom Savini was there. Yeah, I mean, it was a fun screening. Last year was kind of a Night 90 reunion. So I was wondering this year. So of course, this year's the 45th anniversary of Dawn of the Dead, and I was wondering if maybe they were going to screen the Dawn 3D again there. I'd love if they just did a straight up Dawn screening, but I would think that the 3D would actually be a little easier to get, because I think that's what Richard Rubenstein is all about. Getting that out there and seeing it and trying to recoup some of the money that he spent on making it. So, I remember one of the Merle Haggard songs. Sony wanted 2,000 for 2 years. Oh yeah. No, that's another. I mean, trying to get music. There's no. That's one thing that, I mean, you can tell George never really used a lot of popular music in his films, and that's a big reason why. I mean, it's so expensive for 2 years. Film festivals, right? That's yeah, for a Merle Haggard song too. I mean, geez. Unless of course you have connections, which I'm assuming you don't. But I guess if you're Rob Zombie, making a film, I mean, I guess it's a lot easier to get licensing rights for a lot of those songs coming. That's one of my favorite things about Rob Zombie's films is the music that he uses in it. Same for Tarantino. That's one of my just favorite things in general about any film period is the music choices, the soundtrack. I love scores, but if you can add a popular song that I've heard 100 times, if you can put that in a movie and make me experience that song differently, to where anytime I listen to that song, I can't help but think about that particular scene that the song was in. The ending of Devil's Rejects, perfect example. Freebird, I mean, just the way that was used in the end of that, it was just flawless. I mean, a lot of the music in Devil's Rejects, I think, was just perfectly used. Rob Zombie's pretty good about that. Tarantino is amazing at that as well. I can't tell you how many songs that I've just discovered and fell in love with just from watching Tarantino's films. But yeah, I mean, but just to be able to have the opportunity to do that is really rare and really hard for a lot of filmmakers. It's pretty fucking insane. That's interesting. Seeing all 4 Romero zombie films in the theater, best experience was Day in '85. That's interesting because, of course, I think as everybody knows now, Day was kind of considered a big flop when it came out in '85, and I think Day of the Dead to me is aging kind of in the same vein that The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, is aging over the years. Because The Thing was considered a huge flop when it came out. And of course, now over the years, it's become, one, I think, pretty much, uh, you know, well known as one of Carpenter's best films and one of the best horror films ever. I think that same thing's happening with Day. I mean, there's a huge resurgence. And the first time, I'll be honest, first time I saw Day of the Dead, and I saw that one. Uh, I saw that one after I saw Night, Dawn, and even the Night 90 remake. I didn't like Day of the Dead the first time I saw it. And I think it's for all the same reasons that everybody else didn't like it in '85. It wasn't Dawn of the Dead, and I wasn't prepared for that because God, it opens. They're flying into this deserted town, and zombies are everywhere, and in my and I think I was what 12, maybe 13 at the time I first saw Day of the Dead, and I'm thinking like, God damn, this is going to be an epic masterpiece. I mean, just the start of it, and then they just kind of go underground, and it becomes this whole other thing. I wasn't prepared for that, and it wasn't until a few years after the fact that I got that DVD release that Anchor Bay did, and really rewatched it and watched some of the behind the scenes and all that stuff. And before I really got an appreciation of it, and to the point where I started to become obsessed with that film too. I've always wanted to go visit Fort Myers, where they shot a lot of that exterior stuff. Apparently, a lot of that still looks the same. Um, but yeah, that's interesting that your best experience was Day in '85, and I could see that. I mean, to me, the gore and the effects in Day of the Dead to this day are still some of the best that I've ever seen in any film. To this day, they look the most realistic. I can't stress that enough about how that's Savini's masterpiece to me. But yeah, I guess sneaking into the theater, that sounds like a pretty fun adventure to go on to get into Day of the Dead. But yeah, I mean, I also just think that people weren't ready for such a dark, depressing fucking movie like Day of the Dead back in 1985. Because I mean, that's the same year that Return of the Living Dead came out and was a huge success. And those are two completely different type of films. I know George hates Return of the Living Dead. I like Return of the Living Dead a lot. That's one I used to watch a lot when I was younger, and it's such a fun movie. But it's such a different thing than what Day of the Dead is. And I think people in '85 were kind of, I mean, horror at that time had already kind of gone through the slasher phase and was kind of transitioning into like the Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Creeps, Killer Clowns from Outer. You know what I'm talking about? That period of horror there where it was all kind of tongue in cheek and a little lighter, and it's not as gruesome as the shit we saw in the early '80s. And then Day of the Dead comes along, and it's just the most. There's no hope. It's gory. People are getting torn to fucking shreds. There's no humor. I mean, there is a little humor in Day of the Dead. It's very, very, very dark humor. George always talks about how humorous he thought Joe Pilato's performance as Captain Rhodes was in in Day of the Dead. And there is, some humor, but people talk about the overacting in that sometimes, and to me, that's what people would be acting like if I was in a situation where I was stuck underground all day, every day, and the world outside as I knew it has completely ended and fallen apart. I would probably be a fucking hyena-like lunatic, like those people were at that point. So yeah, I just I don't know. I just don't think people were ready for that in '85 around that time period. I mean, even like Texas Chainsaw Part 2 was very humorous. There was a lot of humor to it. It was not as depressing and dreary as the original. So I just think it was a little ahead of its time, and I think people really started to rediscover that years later, and really appreciate it for what it is. Because I love Day of the Dead now. I mean, as you can see, I get posters and all kinds of shit. I'm a huge Day of the Dead fan. Saw The Exorcist on Halloween night at midnight. You could hear a pin drop. I imagine so. I imagine so. Exorcist was one of those the first time I saw it as a kid, because I mean it had been built up. And that was the thing. My parents were really cool about like I was talking about earlier with my dad and me and my dad watching Hellraiser, and when I was like 5. My parents were always pretty cool about letting me just kind of explore what I was interested in, and if I was interested in seeing a movie, unless it was just something that you shouldn't let any fucking child see. They weren't like, here's a Serbian film, good luck. Um, um, but they were pretty open about letting me watch what I wanted to watch. Um, oh fuck, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, The Exorcist. So growing up, they were always talking about The Exorcist. That was the scariest movie I've ever seen. It's the scariest movie ever made. So growing up, I always heard this, and then by the time I actually watched it for the first time, I was probably 8 or 9, maybe 10, maybe I was a little older than that. But it was right around that time that it was re-released as the version you've never seen, which it's probably the version that I don't think most people really cared to see, but whatever. And I remember I found it kind of boring as a kid the first time I saw it. And I think it's just because it had built up and been hyped so much by my parents and older people in my life that it was just kind of this isn't what I was expecting. Um, but I and I remember just kind of thinking that all through high school, and I was never a big Exorcist. And then I went back and rewatched it when I was. This is funny because I actually was older when I was in my like early 20s, late teens, early 20s, and it freaked the fuck out of me. I mean, it was one of those movies that after it was over, I didn't want to get up. I was kind of very suspicious of everything. Like, so it actually had more of an effect on me as an adult than it did on me as a child, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, now I'm in full agreement. The Exorcist is a classic, and of course they got the new one coming out with uh, fuck, what's his name? Gordon Green, something. Fuck, what's his the dude who did the Halloween films? David Gordon Green is doing the new Exorcist films. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm not gonna lie, my expectations are not that high. Um, although I am one of the few people that actually pretty I dug Halloween Ends. It's hard to say, but it's true. I can't lie. I did not hate that film. I didn't like the first two. Maybe that's the secret. If you don't like the first two films, you will like Halloween Ends. But if you did like the first two films, then you're gonna hate Halloween Ends. I think that's pretty much the consensus on that. Let's see. We've been on a little bit more than an hour here. So you got Day and the Thing are definitely parallel. Agree. Got denied Texas Chainsaw 2, so we saw The Fly. The Fly is another really, really good one. Another master effects performance. Who did the effects on that? Was that Rob Bottin that did the effects on The Fly? I could get up and go look, or I could Google it. Fuck, I'm gonna Google it real quick, and then we're gonna watch a little film here. I'm pretty sure Fly effects. That doesn't work either. Anyway, what the hell? Fuck it. Chris Wallace, Stan Winston. I'm not familiar with Chris Wallace. Is that how it's pronounced? Wallace? Sorry if you hear my keyboard is tapping here. Do I not have fucking internet? What is going on? I could definitely see Stan Winston. That's another pretty good horror film that Watched here not long ago. Pumpkinhead, Stan Winston's. There it is. There we go. I don't know why my internet was working. What else is Chris? Oh, he did Gremlins. Okay, yes, I have heard of this guy. So yeah, he did Gremlins, Fly 2. I guess he did effects on that. Which the effects on that were still pretty good. Not the best film, but okay. I just assume that fucking yeah. Gremlins. I love the Gremlins and Gremlins 2. If you look in the background in a lot of those shots where there's a lot of Gremlins, there's some that's just they're just puppets that are just hanging there. It's pretty fucking hilarious. But yeah, love Gremlins. I just saw Gremlins 2 the first time not that long ago. Actually, it was always one of those movies that was like, Gremlins is such a perfect film that I don't why bother, watching Gremlins 2. But a friend of mine talked me into it, and I can't believe I was sleeping on that film. And that's that's it. I almost like that one as much as the original in a completely different way, though. But okay, cool. Learning new things, folks. Appreciate it. Appreciate you setting me straight on my bullshit. I just assumed that any great effects work done in the '80s was done by Rob Bottin, just from fucking God, just look at his work from The Fog. I think is where he started, but of course The Thing, RoboCop, Total Recall. Fucking love Rob Bottin. Don't really know whatever happened to him. Times have changed. We all saw these at the theater. Every weekend we went driving as well. Yeah, it's man, I don't know. I know drive-in theaters. I know you look at the Mahoning out in Pennsylvania. They still do pretty big business, and they still show 35 millimeter prints. I would love to go there someday for some screening. Of course, I think they have celebrity guests and stuff there as well. A lot of the time, but there's some drive-in theaters around here that are doing pretty well still. I mean, they're still up and running, but anytime that I've gone to one of them, it seemed pretty packed. People having a good time. It's a completely different experience. But yeah, man, movie theaters now. I completely agree. Theater is too expensive. Man, and I think that may have always been the case. I don't know if I'm just misremembering, but it has always just felt like the movie theater popcorn. If you want to get popcorn and a drink, that's going to be like $25. The tickets itself, unless you go to and I think I guess it depends. The worst is fucking AMC theaters. Man, those ticket prices are insane. The concession prices are insane, and it's just. I think I've heard other filmmakers and stuff talk about this. I think just the downfall of fucking movie theaters is switching to digital. There's just something. It's the same shit you could see at home, and you not have to worry about spending a shitload of money. I mean, I guess if you're on a date or something like that, or like me, where a lot of the times that I go to the theater, I'll go with a friend or something at night, or if I just go by myself, I'll just go catch a matinee during the day. On a weekend, I got nothing else going on. But yeah, I don't know what the future holds for theaters in general. Drive-ins. I think some of the most prosperous theaters that I've seen lately are just those, like I was saying, just those small little artsy art house theaters that are playing, old films, a lot of underground indie films. There's one in Paducah, Kentucky, that I've been to. I actually saw Terminator 2 there a couple of years ago. Called the Maiden Alley Theater, and they play a lot of just a lot of different stuff. A lot of the films that are not coming around to the big multiplexes and stuff now. I just think, yeah, I don't know. There's just I hope that these fucking Marvel movies. Well, what do the kids say? No cap or something like that. I don't fucking know. I'm not gonna bullshit you. I do not like Marvel movies. I do not like DC movies. I love Batman. I do love that. Any Dark Knight. I grew up on Batman. I'm a '90s kid. My generation superhero was Batman. So, but other than that, the Marvel MCU universe, all that stuff, I'm not. I don't like CGI for one. I love action films, but I haven't seen a good action film in a long, long time because there's too much CGI. And part of the charm of watching an action film is watching shit blow the fuck up, watching it actually blow up, and knowing that, oh, this is a real building that they blew up, or a car that they really crashed. Now there's so much CGI in these action films that, oh man, I'm about to go on a rant about CGI. But anyway, you know what I'm saying, like. But I really do hope. I feel like they've been kind of in a slump. I think that's the only thing really keeping theaters alive anymore, because nobody can make a fucking comedy anymore. You're not allowed to make a comedy anymore, um, an actual comedy. Um, and I think that's the only thing really keeping people going to the theater are these big Hollywood blockbuster movies. And I hope they continue, or we find something else. I feel like a lot of the big movies now are horror. I mean, Evil Dead Rise is still doing really well at the theater. Scream 6 made a shitload of money. Say what you will about those movies. Did not like Scream 6 at all. I haven't seen the new Evil Dead movie. I don't really have an urge to. But but I feel like those are the movies that people are actually still going to see is horror. Um, I don't know if that was if that's a more recent thing or what, but even then, I mean, it was still half packed theaters on Friday nights a lot of the time. So, and I think they were really banking on that new Avatar movie that James Cameron did, to really kind of pump life back into the theaters after COVID. But I'm not 100% sure how that worked. I know it made money. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure it made a shit ton of money. I never made it around to seeing it. I don't like 3D, and B, I just never got around to going to see it in the theater. Just didn't feel pressing at the time, I guess. But anyway, I think tonight I'm going to cap us off here with one of my favorite Romero parody films. It's a short film from 1990 that I think premiered, that they played at the Zombie Jamboree in Pittsburgh in '93, which is one of the early Pittsburgh conventions that brought together all of the Romero universe. But yeah, I just stumbled across this, kind of in the mood to watch it. I figure I might as well watch it with everybody else that wants to watch along with me. So yeah, it's called Night of the Living Bread. So I'm gonna throw it up here on the screen. We're gonna watch it. Let me know what you think if you've never seen it. It's available on the Millennium DVD release of Night of the Living Dead that came out in like 2002, I think, but I haven't seen it in years. I watched the first time when I got that, and I was probably a little younger. And me and my sister, where we just it's an inside joke for us now is Night of the Living Bread. So yeah, pulled this up. I'm going to put it on my page as well. So if you just want to check it out, check out the video alone, you can do that as well. But yeah, let's check it out. Here is Night of the Living Bread from 1990.
This crisis, this radio station, in affiliation with other radio and television stations in the area, will stay on the air around the clock, broadcasting emergency information. Here are the facts as we know them at this time. Apparently, slices of bread have animated and are attacking human beings. Yes, we realize how incredible this story sounds, but reports have been pouring in from all areas of the city and surrounding communities. We repeat, slices of bread have risen and are attacking humans. Civil defense authorities are urging people to stay at their houses and places of work. Keep your windows and doors closed. Destroy all slices of bread where you are. Do not open wrapped packages of bread. Simply throw them in the oven or the fireplace and burn them. Be careful about opening your refrigerator. The leftovers may have become dangerous. Again, we realize how absurd this report sounds, but it is absolutely essential that these precautions are followed. Your very lives are at stake. Stay tuned to your radio or television for up-to-the-minute reports and updates. Again, this radio station,
you know the basement's the safest place, and there's a television down there.
Let's put the women downstairs and go get my truck.
All right.
On the air until this
Judy,
comes
take her downstairs. We're going for help.
We urge you to stay where you are. Take all precautions against the rampaging bread. Stay tuned and do as you are told. Although it is unknown at this time what started this crisis, investigating scientific experts are betting on yesterday's explosion of the wondrous bread factory.
During this crisis, Channel 27 News will be replacing all normally scheduled programming so that we can bring you the most current information as we receive it. We will be having live reports.
We gotta keep those things back. Grab that toaster.
We now take you to a live report from the field.
This is Jeff Drexel reporting live from St. Kevin's Church in the downtown district. I'm standing here with Father Bry, whose church is being used as a shelter in this emergency. So how are things going here, Father Bry?
Well, things are pretty chaotic right now, but we're doing everything we can to maintain a sense of normalcy. In fact, we're about to give communion.
Communion, doesn't that involve the use of the holy wafer, a form of bread?
Well, yes, it does, but pardon me.
I don't care what anybody says. That's still better than the 30th anniversary version of Night of the Living Dead. But yeah, there you go, folks. Night of the Living Bread. Hadn't seen that in probably years at this point. Again, it was made with that same, and I'll close on this. It was made with that little 8-minute parody was made by a group of friends who wanted to make a movie. And that little movie they made that was inspired by Night of the Living Dead and George Romero ended up being on the Night of the Living Dead DVD. So, I mean, just, I guess the lesson there is, if you want to make films, just do it. That's the independent spirit. That's the Romero spirit. If there's a story you want to tell it. So, again, that's a perfect example of George's influence in the world. His influence on film, and just the way people look at making film. I mean, any horror director that came after George knows and will freely admit they owe a lot to George. Whether it's Sam Raimi, Danny Boyle. I mean, Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later is a love letter to George Romero. I don't care what anybody says. If he can deny it, they're not zombies, they're infected. That was literally Danny Boyle took George Romero's 3 original trilogy zombie films and made it into one film. Literally from down to the point where the shopping sequence there, and with the music that sounds, Yeah. And I mean, he may admit it. I mean, he may say it out there. I just know in the past that Danny Boyle has kind of played it down that it's a zombie film. It's a zombie film, and I love 20 Days Later. That's another one that I would put in my favorite films. It sounds like I'm shitting on it, but I'm not. I love 20 Days Later. I thought they did they were one of the few that did it right. Didn't do it like George, but they did it right. I don't think George cared for that movie. I don't really remember hearing him talk too much about 28 Days Later. But anyway, rambling at this point. I've been on here for about an hour and a half tonight. It's been fun chatting with you guys. That's the big reason that I've started this channel and started doing streams like this, is to connect and kind of meet other like-minded lunatics like myself. So happy to answer questions, discuss any topics you guys have. Yes, this is a Romero-related channel. It's going to be that way. But when we do these streams on Sunday night, fuck it, man. Let's just chat. So yeah, appreciate you guys coming on. I got to mentally prepare to go back to work tomorrow, and but yeah. So until next week, I may do may have a video idea in mind. I might drop another top 10 list coming up here, and I think this one's would be a pretty interesting topic. It's just one that I just kind of brainstormed tonight, a little bit before I came on. But the top 10 Romero villains, not zombies. I don't look at zombies as the villains in films. They're just victim of circumstance, but I mean the real sons of bitches, the Harry Coopers of the world, the Kaufmans of the world, the Captain Rhodeses of the world, the Milo Styles of the world. You Bruiser fans out there. But yeah, I think that may be a top 10 video. That may be my next top 10 video I might do. So I'd love to get some ideas or get you guys top 10 on that. What are you thinking? Top 10 villains in a Romero film? There's a lot of Romero shit in Dawn of the Dead. There's probably 5 or 6 real sons of bitches to pick from. So that might be coming up. But yeah, I'll probably hop on again next Sunday night. I'll try to do this, like I said, every Sunday night of the Living Dead, where I just hop on live and we can just shoot the shit and get mentally prepared to return to the real world tomorrow. So, but yeah, appreciate you guys hopping on, checking this out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and like I said, let's connect over our love for Romero and film. So until next time, stay scared. Have a wonderful week.